Hello, Victoria.
Hi, Joe.
I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, would you like to kick us off with my bulk standard who you are, where you're from, and where you're based now?
Love to. Love talking about myself, actually. All right. So I'm Victoria Mintey, and I was born and raised in Northern Ireland. And I loved it there. My family are still there. And from there, I went to uni in England and kind of stayed on in England and pursued the beginning of adult life there. And then I moved to Singapore 13 years ago. Just celebrated my 13-year anniversary here in Singapore. And there was never a plan to be here for 13 years, but I guess we can get into that later. So yeah, that's me. Northern Ireland via the rest of the UK, now in Singapore.
Well, let's go. Well, you touched that your first move, not as a trailing spouse, but as a sprightly Northern Irish gal crossing the, what do you don't call it? We call it a pond from Australia to New Zealand. What do you
Oh,
call it?
we say across the water. Across the
Across the,
water, that's what everybody calls it. The
okay, well,
mainland.
when you went to the mainland, what were you
Yeah.
doing? What were you doing at uni?
Yeah. So I went to uni and I pursued science because that's what I'm capable of at school. That was kind of what I was getting good grades in. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. Well, I did actually, Joe. The truth of the matter is I've known since I was 4 that I wanted to be a professional actor, but I was too damn scared to say it out loud. I didn't want to admit it to myself. I didn't want to say it to my family or my friends. So it was one of like the biggest parts of my after school life, was doing all kinds of productions and stuff. But I just sort of thought, I'm going to stay on the straight and narrow. I'm going to go and do the academic degree. So I did that at a really good uni, gorgeous place called Durham in the north of England. And meanwhile, I had checked that Durham offered some great extracurricular theatre stuff to do. So kept it up through uni. And then towards the end of uni, I heard that you could go and do your master's at drama school. And I thought, oh, well, a master's sounds very academic and very proper. So if I can kind of gussy it up as a master's to my parents, then maybe that will still seem like a viable career option. So I sort of talked to them, hey, can I go and audition for drama school? There's all these master's programs. And they supported me in that, as they have done in everything, God bless them. So I got into drama school in London, moved straight down there after uni. And that was beginning. Yeah, that was the beginning of following what I'd always wanted to do. And it's it was really bloody hard. Oh my God, being an actor in London was really hard, and that's a whole other podcast series that someone will record one day. So when the whole conversation about Singapore happened, it was a bit of a bolt from the blue for me, for sure, because if you're an actor, that's where you got to be, right? If you are an actor living in the UK, you live as close to London as you can afford, man, because that's just where the action is. So then, do you want me to get into it? Do you want me to get into?
Well, I want to stop you there just for a second,
Okay.
because will have to admit to the listeners that we are actually friends offline. So I did not know that you had a science degree. Can we please talk about that?
Okay, sure. Oh my God, I love talking about this because I feel so legit, when you tell people you got a BSc. Yeah, I've got a science degree. I'm extremely intellectual given the chance. I have a degree in, technically it's called natural sciences, but I guess I majored in psychology and anthropology. And look, if you look at the trajectory of my life and where I am now with the kind of parallel career that I'm doing right now, my interest in human beings has just always been there. So I was good at the science part, but I even managed to steer that into a corner, which was learning about how did we evolve into these creatures that we are, right? Doing my anthropology, psychology, what the hell's all that about? How does the brain work? How do the eyes work? How does all of this mechanism in our heads talk to us? So yes, I have a science degree. There were elements during that 3 years that were extremely tough and a real wake-up call for someone who at school I hadn't had to try that hard to do well. So uni was a bit like, oh, whoa, okay. There's much bigger fish than I in this particular pond. So it was a really important time for me, that 3 years, hugely important in terms of like my independence, because growing up back home, not only is Northern Ireland a small place, but I went to the same school where my parents were teachers. So I was in the same place every day for 14 years. Everybody knew me. Everybody knew who my parents were. Every time someone got detention from my dad, that was like another talking point over lunch. Like, oh, so it was kind of funny little tiny ecosystem that I was in. So to get to move out of that and do my own thing was a really important time. Yeah.
And in a beautiful part of England and a beautiful school. Did you know that I used to live in Newcastle? So practically neighbours with Durham. I did.
Oh, yeah. It's like the big sister, like the bold big sister to Durham is Newcastle. And if you've never been to Durham, listeners, you must go. Bill Bryson said, "Go to Durham, take my car." That's like the big slogan that Durham has, because Bill Bryson, the travel writer, liked it.
Oh, there you go. Well, I was going to say it's like Newcastle's like the big sister with a really short dress and no jacket on.
Yeah. Durham's slightly more sensible. Yeah. Beautiful place, but also, like, again, I think there is a theme, right? So I'm there and I'm studying and I'm wiggling my way into the modules that will teach me about humans. But I'm also, again, I find myself in a really small pond, right? Because Durham's a really tiny city. It's a cathedral city. It's cobbled streets. The uni itself is collegiate, right? A bit like the Oxford or the Cambridge sort of system. So you have these small colleges, and you become part of that college, which is sort of a small unit within the bigger university. So you're creating, what are you creating? You're creating a community within the bigger community. So you have that sort of safety and you can really get to know people quickly. And yeah, I was sort of heading off to be independent, but doing it in quite a safe small pond. And lo, here I am in Singapore, which is another really small place. So I think I seem to function pretty well and thrive pretty well in these
You're
smaller
a small city girl.
communities. I think
okay,
so.
Budding actress in London would, no offense, but that seems like kind of potential career, detrimental to career, to leave the potential of a West End show to go to Singapore. So how did, well, I'm assuming, because you're on a trailing spouse podcast, there's someone else involved in this decision making.
Surprise. Yeah. Okay. So the preamble to this, I was not married to this guy at this point. I am now. But 13, 14 years ago, we were dating in London. And I actually had not long returned from a stint singing on a cruise. I don't know if you and I have talked about my cruise days, but that was also a thing. We need another episode on that. So I'd spent... Why are you laughing? It was great. So I was a cruise singer. I did one contract. So I was away for a year trying to date this guy, long distance and so on. Got back to London. We had this nice 6 months of me settling back in to life there, doing my temp work to pay my rent. And then my husband, Steve, he went on a business trip to Singapore and he came back, and I can remember quite vividly where we were sitting in my rental flat somewhere in Blackwall in London. And I said something like, "Did they offer you a job or something?" And his face just went his jaw just dropped and his eyes went wide. And we weren't even alone at the time. There was someone else sitting opposite us, like a visiting friend was with me. And he went, "Yeah, they did. They've offered me a job in Singapore." So this was a big shock to him, a bigger shock to me. And some conversations followed where he said, "Look, I'm really interested in this job, but I only want to go if you're up for coming with me. So then followed a lot of soul searching, I would say, because I thought exactly as you said, if you are an actor, then London's where you should be because that's the land of opportunity. So I talked to everyone about it and shared this kind of dilemma. And the thing I remember most distinctly was going into this temp job that I was doing. So me and about half a dozen other actors were working effectively at a call center. Okay, so we were calling around the country trying to recruit people to come to a conference, and we did this day in, day out. But it was flexible, so we loved it. And I walked in there and I said, guys, you're not going to believe this. My boyfriend has asked me to move to Singapore with him. And without taking a breath, all six of them went, go, get out of here immediately. What are we doing sitting in this gray office getting paid an hourly rate? None of us are getting any decent work here. It's total madness just to sit on our butts and wait for these jobs to come in. Just go. We would literally give a kidney to be in your position. So they were really the ones who helped me to take the leap. And we agreed that we would move here and give it a go. You know, look, we're in our 20s. What's to lose? I remember my dad saying, look, all you'd have to do is just get on a plane and come back if you hate it. So then we moved. And that was the beginning of 2011. Yeah, 2011, beginning of 2011.
So talk me through the logistics of that, like, because I'm coming with a Singapore in 2024 lens at this, and I know for couples that are unmarried that's actually quite a challenge to do visas and all of those sorts of things. Talk me through that, what that was like.
Yeah. Well, I seem to well, first of all, obviously he was coming on a corporate job and he was going to have an employment pass. That wasn't going to be an issue. And we spoke very clearly to his company and we said, look, unless you can sort something out for me to stay and have some rights here, then we're not interested. So they did everything they could liaising with us. We had to, because we weren't married, we had to show proof that we were living together. And then other than that, so I think we had to get some testimonials from a couple of people just to vouch for us. And then I was put onto a long-term visit pass as opposed to a dependent pass. Won't get into the nitty-gritty of that because the Singapore rules about those things do change quite a lot. So I came in on a long-term visit pass and I was sort of okayed that we could stay. And then I was reassured that working would be fine. However, as an actor, you're essentially a lifelong freelancer because every job you get is with a different company. And as a foreigner in Singapore, you're not allowed to do that. They want you to be tied to one company. So I actually was really very fortunate because one of the early jobs that I got was it was sort of an online edutainment type thing. So I was hosting like a kids English language show. And you're smiling right now because you're trying to imagine what that was like. I'll try and dig up some footage for you sometime. But that company, they were so interested to have me work for them. They said, look, we've got a ton of episodes we need to record. We want you to be the host. And I said, well, that's going to be a problem because I can't sign an agreement with you because then it means I won't be able to do any other acting jobs and that doesn't interest me. And they said, well, how about you work for us and essentially we'll act like your agent. So they were able to invoice other companies on my behalf. So it was sort of a loophole where they were representing me, if you like, and any theater work or any other TV work that I had, then it was sort of all my wages would go through them and then they passed it on to me. So early day, I mean, it feels like lifetimes ago right now, but that was just one piece of, well, partly luck, but partly give myself credit also for kind of just saying, this is how I want things to pan out and can you help? I think you sort of have to ask and you got to lay your cards on the table quite a bit, particularly in the situation that I was in at that stage.
Interesting. So what did that first sort of 6 months look like here? Like, what did it look like as far as getting settled, finding your people, getting sort of life in order? Because I know a lot of the people I talk to have that almost like I don't ever say that it's an easy step in, but the kids are a really good conduit to sort of cracking into crowds. So what did that look like for you guys? You guys were young and footloose and fancy free.
We were. Oh, we were. Yep. So there was no school gates to meet anyone. In fact, there was barely like social media at that stage. So when we arrived, Steve started work almost immediately after having food poisoning for a week upon arrival. We were in a service apartment. The company had arranged for someone to help me look for apartments, right? So we had to shop around to find where we wanted to rent to live. So that took up some time. I was kind of like the one of us who had the time to go out and look for a place that felt like home that we could set up and live. So there was that, but for me it was huge. I had to find some friends. I had to find people who I liked enough to then make them my friends. So there wasn't much social media. There wasn't a lot of. It wasn't very common to be doing that, to be looking around for groups of people. So I remember going on some website called Expat Forum. I haven't checked to see if it still exists, but it was a really, really basic message board, really old school. And I probably just filtered by Singapore, and there was a post from two women who were, similar age to me, and they said, "Hey, we just got here and we're arranging some drinks on Orchard Road. Please join us." And it felt like the most odd thing in the world, to be honest with you. But I thought, what other choice do I have? I'm going to have to stick my neck out, and I'm just going to have to try this. So that is sort of ingrained in my memory of showing up at an Emerald Hill bar or something, and there was a good crowd of people, and then you go, oh wow, okay, so there's at least a dozen of us who are feeling the same way and looking around thinking, how am I going to build my support network? So that was the beginning. And I think once you've broken the back of that awkwardness, or at least for me, you can just start to meet people, and then they introduce you to other people. I think as well as finding things very inorganically and very intentionally here, there were a lot of intros made. So it was like, oh, you're in Singapore now? Well, so-and-so's dog's brother's uncle is there. Why don't you guys have a coffee? So there was a lot of things like that that was really helpful and really nice. And not everybody became our best friend, but again, it's just having those little connections and feeling like you're starting to grow a life, if you like. But I think the big turning point for me was not so much a friendship thing, because I think that has to be a sort of slow burn, it's like, or a snowballing effect. For me, the sense of belonging was getting my first theatre job, which happened about 6 months in. So it was in the summertime, and I had auditioned for one of the big theatre companies here because they had an open call just to see who was around, what talent is around. And they contacted me and they said, well, look, we haven't cast you in anything, but we're having a workshop because we're still developing a script. The lady we wanted to do the workshop, she's not free, so could you just stand in for her? and with I took no offense to that. I thought, yeah, okay, it's a foot in the door. It's one of those classic moments of get your foot in the door. And sure enough, best move I ever made, because there were 4 of us in this children's show. I think it was Jack and the Beanstalk or something, a new version of Jack and the Beanstalk. And the director had come over. He was Australian. He'd come over. He'd written it. He was directing it. He created the songs for it. And after this week of just working on the script and refining it and so on, he took me to one side and he said, I think I'm going to write you into this. I think we need to add a 5th actor to the cast for the real production at the end of the year. I want you to be in it. So I'm going to rework this script so that one of these parts is yours now. I was like, yes. Jackpot.
There's 2 giants now.
There's 2 giants. Well, he was just like, we're going to have all these people. We're going to have all these people doing multi roles, and we're really stretching to do it with 4 actors. So why not add you as the 5th and spread it out a little? So I think I was Mysterious Woman, and I was the Magic Harp. So then a few months after that, we started the real rehearsal process and everything, and it was great fun. And then it led to a couple of like the biggest, most exciting theatre jobs that I've had here was with that same company in the following years. So that for me was like, wow, okay, I am now in Singapore. Look what I'm doing. I'm on a stage in Singapore. I'm actually being fulfilled in my passion and my ambition of being an actor on this island. So how great is that?
Okay, I have 2 questions on that. My first question is a quick one. Are you still friends with anyone that went to those first drinks?
Oh, am I still friends with anyone? I still know that there's one of them still here, but I sadly don't see her very often. The others, we are sort of, connected on all the platforms and so on. So every so often I'll flick through like who had another kid or whatever. So yes, I know there's one of them who's still around. And then, that's a whole other thing too, right? Because you meet fantastic people all the time, but then they leave. It's extremely tough. We've had real waves of that happening.
Yeah. My second question was, of the 6 or the 5 or 6 other actors in London that were in the call centre with you, did any of them end up breaking into the
Not a single
mainstream?
one. No, none of them did. Some of them are no longer acting.
Yeah.
Some of them are still acting and sort of jobbing actors, I would say, like I am here. Not a household name, but we're kept busy and doing things. But yeah, there was no one who kind of immediately stepped into a West End role to make me feel like I missed out.
That was where I was leading.
Yeah. Apparently something like 70% of people who graduate from drama school quit the industry entirely.
Tough gig.
Very tough, very tough. And we choose it. We absolutely go into it with open hearts, and we know it's going to be hard. But the love of it sees you through.
So tell me, I think what I was really sort of keen to sort of weave into our conversation today is around the skills and I guess strategy. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but like you over your professional career have built a skill set that, I don't know, even just listening to you saying that you found it uncomfortable and sort of nerve-wracking and stuff turning up to the drinks for the first time, that actually surprises me. I sort of like expect actors to have, this endless supply of confidence that means you've got no qualms bowling into a drinks where you don't know anyone. So I think I find it really intriguing that mere mortals like myself who have no like even glimmers of the arts and capability in that sort of sphere, that you've by default like developed these skills and things that I think a lot of people moving to a new place can be quite envious of. And that, so I don't know, like I guess, have you, because you do a lot of stuff, yes, you spend time like on the stage and doing that side of things, but you also do a lot of work behind the scenes as far as, well, actually, do you want to talk on that a bit? Because I want to then pull from that sort of work and see, because I think there's some really genuine and interesting strategies that I've sort of picked up from you around like, not that fake it till you make it sort of thing that we default to, but like, anyway, you can see where I'm going with this. Do you want to talk about some of the other stuff that you do? And then I've got some questions around what that looks like.
Okay, great. All right. So the transferable skills that you have from being an actor that might map onto mere mortals, your words. No, the transferable skills from theater training and living and working as an actor, I figured out about, I don't know, a couple of years in, maybe let's say 2 years into living here, that there was a world in which actors were really, really valuable in corporate life. So The first experience I had of that was I was asked to be a corporate role player. And that meant that we were flying up to the Petronas Towers in KL to work with people at Shell, I think. And these were very senior people in Shell who were doing a leadership program. And this segment was on their communication skills, right? Their leadership style and how they communicate to their teams or external stakeholders. So there's a lot at stake in the oil industry. So we can think what we like about that. But so I was seated in, one of these amazing office spaces up there. And I was, oh my God, I was so nervous because I thought, how am I going to get away with this? Because the situation is you're improvising and ad-libbing with this person. They are playing themselves and you're pretending to be some kind of stakeholder. And it turned out, like I figured out, maybe 20 seconds into the role play conversation, that the guy sitting opposite me, not only was he more nervous than I was, but he had much fewer skills in terms of reading people, in terms of speaking with different choices of emotion or different choices of tone, in improvising, putting his thoughts together. And this, it honestly was a big eye opener for me, where I thought, wow, there's tons of stuff that we can mine out of the acting world to help these people. Because look, throughout your career, there's not an awful lot of focus on that. It's all about what you know, how knowledgeable you are, and how fast you are delivering the work. And it's only when people seem to get to this sort of mid-career spot, that's where I meet a lot of people right now, and they go, oh, hang on, I've just had this new revelation that what I know has got me this far, but how I communicate it is going to get me to the next place. So upon being sort of inducted into this world of role play, I also got interested in the people who are at the front of the room and what kind of material, what kind of training courses they were creating and delivering. And I really wanted to have a go at doing that from my own experience and perspective, because I guess the sort of mission statement, if you want one, is I never wanted anyone to feel like they couldn't speak up for themselves. And I was meeting a lot of people who were in that situation. So I started to create my own training workshops under my own company to get a small group of people together, could be from any industry you like, because these are real human issues and hang-ups that we're talking about. So get the small group together and run workshops where we talk about, okay, what is it about the communication and specifically public speaking? So if you have to present, if you have to pitch, if you're going into a meeting and you're really trying to influence and there's some sort of call to action, or you have to make an ask, or you're trying to make a sale. So these kind of situations, how can we help you feel more comfortable in your own skin when you're standing in front of that group? Because God knows actors have to do that every single night. We stand, in front of hundreds of strangers. How are you going to feel comfortable with that? How are you going to say what you mean in a manner that expresses the conviction with which you believe it, right? Because I feel like there's often a huge mismatch between all of this expertise that people have and the way that it comes out. Suddenly the message from the brain to the mouth, something is lost in that translation, and it can come out stilted, hesitant, monotone, anything. But often we're just not seeing the passion and the knowledge that really does exist for these people. So I like to work with groups, or I do a lot of work one-to-one as well. It's not just building your confidence, because honestly, you're always going to feel a bit nervous, but it's actually using a lot of the vocabulary, the skills, and the nuances that actors understand in terms of what's showing on the outside, right? You may know something to be true. You may believe in your heart that this client should work with you because you're going to do fantastic things for them. But if you don't externalize that, if it doesn't come through in your tone, if it doesn't come through in the energy in your body or the way you look them in the eye, then you're probably not gonna move the needle. You're not going to be memorable. You're not going to make a personal connection. So that is what I am doing alongside of my acting now. I have to confess something. I still find, the hardest thing is that walking into that group of people where, where you don't have the assignment of I'm the speaker today. You're asking about, okay, how come you're nervous going for drinks with people you don't know? I think for me, I'm much better when it's sort of established. Okay, you're the speaker, you have the stage. That I can absolutely step into and embody that. But I do still get nervous at the mingling networking events. So I hope that is, I hope that's a positive thing, because I'm constantly like using my own mess ups. Like if this podcast is a disaster, it will become like a series of 6 LinkedIn posts that I will share, because there's absolutely no way that I'm 100% confident with all communication scenarios. There's no way. But I do know how to stand up in front of an audience, and I do know how to make my passion on the inside show on the outside. So that is what I'm trying to do. I love working with all these different kinds of people. And I love just hearing, oh, guess what? Everybody in this room has all the same qualms that everybody last week in that other room had. Like we're just these human beings with these little survival mechanisms that kick off every now and again. So it's very, very interesting to me. There's the psychology student coming back, you see? It's all linked.
So interesting. I think that's like double-edged when you're like, oh no, I still get nervous about those sorts of things. And then you're like, oh gosh, someone that does this for a living still gets nervous at those things. That is not helpful.
Yeah.
But I think that at the same time, like you said, then that really can give people the confidence that the feeling of lack of confidence is universal. And it's very, very few people that it doesn't affect.
Yeah, I think if you're not feeling nervous about some of your communication scenarios, to me, that's more of a warning sign, because it's like, are you invested at all? Are you invested in this? Do you care about what the outcome? So look, there's some people do have a level of anxiety or nervousness that really is overwhelming, and we have to do, lots of work to figure out what helps them. But in the main, I would say there's sort of that bell curve of this. And actually, if I can help people to pay a lot less attention to themselves and just focus on the other person, focus on that audience, if it's an audience of 1 or 10 or 100 or 1,000, focus outward, not inward. That's going to remove a whole heap of anxiety, a whole heap of pressure that you've piled on yourself. Because it's not about you. I think I need to get a t-shirt made. So if anyone listening wants to print me a t-shirt, it's not about you, it's about them. That might be the single biggest shift that you could make to start to feel better. Like when you're assigned to present on something, is because we think that you're going to do the best job of taking these people through that story, helping them understand what they need, helping them take away what they need to take away. So focus on that and stop focusing on yourself.
Okay, well, with that said, and then like asking about a relatively explicit or specific sort of circumstance, that I'm sort of thinking like, because quite often I'm hearing with the crowd that is engaging either with the podcast, with the Trailing Spouse Co, or that people that have come to our in-person events and things, like particularly the in-person events, people will say, oh, I nearly didn't come because, I didn't know anyone. And that's something that we've been so really focused around, is like, how do we sort of try and create that so that you can quite confidently bowl in there not knowing anyone and feel comfortable because everyone else is feeling like that. But it doesn't have to be one of our events, but any event, or if you've relocated somewhere, or if you're just you might have been somewhere for a while and you're trying to build that network and start finding people with similar interests, or just people in general. Can you give some sort of hot tips on what, like, some of those core, could be really basic skills that are or the tools that an actor has in their toolbox that people can sort of try and lean into as far as making those situations more comfortable? Because I know it seems like, look, you and I are both quite extroverted women, but yes, I go to things and I still don't really like going up and walking into a conversation that's already established and the people are already talking and introducing myself, and I still don't really like doing that. But I remind myself, and am reminded on a regular basis, that feeling is debilitating for some people and
Right.
genuinely stops them from being able to engage, which in turn makes either their relocation or their time wherever they are in age and stage in life and things really, really challenging on growing the number of people around them. So yeah, like have you got some sort of little tidbits or hot tips around things that are maybe taught explicitly to actors to get through certain situations?
Yeah. I think that I'm immediately thinking of a basic principle of improvisation, right? So this is going back to my role player jobs that I do from time to time. So the first thing to remember is that initial moment where you're trying to interject, you're trying to find someone to speak to, or you're hoping someone will speak to you. I think let's just park that for a moment because that is the toughest part. I think once you have an in, or once you've heard somebody say something, you've got to apply the principle of yes and. So listening, like building your listening skills is a great idea, and then building with what people around you are saying. And you can build with anything. So I've done this great exercise before, which actually I need to credit to a other trainer in the UK, but it's called Fridge. And essentially it's working on your networking skills by playing a game where you tell me 3 things that are in your fridge, and then I work on asking you open questions just based on those food items. Now, I'm not suggesting that networking events are where you talk about the leftover rice in your fridge. That's not what I'm suggesting. But it's the principle of practicing curiosity with open-ended questions, and whatever they give you, you kind of accept it and think, okay, which little component of what they just said could I build with? So you cannot plan a conversation before it's begun, right? So when you're getting in your head, like, what could I possibly say? I'm not working right now. I don't even know where I'm going to be living. I haven't found an apartment. There's no kids or dogs to chat about. Like, where am I going to begin? Well, you can't. You're making yourself nervous about a conversation that doesn't exist. The same thing as my clients, they make themselves nervous because they might get questions they can't answer. So they're jeopardizing their whole presentation that they've prepped over an imaginary question that nobody has yet asked. So I feel like you have to stop working so many steps ahead. And this is a real actor thing, is to be present. When we are present and we're not running ahead, we're not thinking, why did I just say that thing 5 minutes ago? You've got to stay right here and now. Forget that thing, it's done. Don't worry about later. Just be here and now and listen. So then there's always something to build with. And because you don't, I think that what I'm guilty of, and a couple of years ago, I really had to check myself on this. When I was feeling anxious and I was uncertain because I didn't know someone very well, I would just talk incessantly, right? I would just talk and talk. And Joe is admitting that. Yeah,
I'm raising my hand.
that you also might. So I said, look, why am I feeling like I have to control this conversation? I'm doing that out of anxiety. Oh, what if there's a silence? I better keep saying things. But why should I? It's a two-way street, right? So at any networking event, everyone's got a different level of anxiety, and everyone has a responsibility for those conversations to take some sort of shape. It's not down to you. If it goes badly, that's not your fault. You know, it is two ways. So you show up, be present, listen, and build would be one. And I think that how do you get things started? I would just, again, this is something I would say, like the idea of you've planned a presentation, you might get a scary question. And my first advice is always acknowledge that you don't know the answer. So similarly, in a networking event, you might go, sorry, I'm so sorry. Sorry, this is so embarrassing, but could I just join you? Because I don't know anyone. So it's literally saying out loud how you feel. And again, I don't know. I feel like that is something that actors are very used to doing, calling out what the emotion is. I think the way that we prepare for shows and stuff, it's very playful, it's very exploratory. So we are a little more okay with that vulnerability side. So perhaps you just need to practice that. You practice your opening being, I'm really sorry, but I don't know anyone. Could I just join you? right? And I don't know anyone who would say no to that, right? So it's like, call it
No,
out.
we're very busy with this very private and personal conversation that you've just rudely
Right?
interrupted.
Yeah, and it's super hard. Look, it's really hard, and you've got people. Singapore is such a melting pot. You're meeting people from all over the place. Not only are they in different stages of career, different industries, but they're speaking different languages. They come from different cultural backgrounds, and there's all kinds of nuances there about what might be seen as rude, what might be seen as too pushy, and so on. So you do have to have those conversations. And honestly, as a trailing spouse, you're probably going to have those conversations on your own with yourself at the beginning. And what I find really, really unhelpful is the messaging online of like, find your tribe. Like that just, I've been here 13 years and I just have lots of really nice individual friends. I don't have a tribe. I don't have a squad of people that are there, with a bottle of rosé every Friday afternoon. That just hasn't happened for me. So I feel like there's also a little bit of, I don't know, is there some sort of pressure that we're supposed to create this network and you're supposed to do it fast and it's supposed to be fantastic and it's supposed to be perfect? So yeah, I think I've got a little bit of a problem with that also.
That's interesting. Well, putting back on that, did you ever have your tribe in Durham or in London? Like, was it the same group of people,
Yeah.
or was it that was your personality, that you've always had lots of people all over the place? Because I think it's an interesting thing, because some people do. Like I see it, like I see it at school. There's a crew of mums and they hang out and they do the things together and they really have found their people and things. I'm very much like you. I've got sort of my people. It's not like a gaggle that just sort of
Yeah.
cruises around together. But yeah, I think it's interesting. Do you think that you've done that sort of over your time? Or college is a bit like uni's different in that you're like, you're living, eating, sleeping all in the same little thing. It's a bit different.
Yeah, I had a few groups at uni, and they were quite distinct from each other, but they were like a crew because because of particular where we lived or because of particular interests. And there was like my theater people, there's my college people, and so on. But yeah, I guess I've always had multiple options. I haven't just had that one type group, which I think is really beneficial, right? Because who knows when that's all going to blow up. And in Singapore too, right? Because of the waves, like you meet people at different points, right? If you've moved to a new country, it's not going to be that all those perfect pals are going to rock up on these shores at the same time. If I could gather together my like Hall of Fame friends from Singapore, we all lived here at the same time, how amazing. But it didn't happen that way.
And it was funny, actually, I found when I first sort of got here, I don't know if because we arrived not long after sort of everything had started opening up after COVID, but people were almost a bit sort of like, okay, so how long have you been here? And because you were like new, it was as if they were willing to invest time in you because you weren't going to leave in like the next 6 months. And so people were quite openly saying like, okay, well, look, it's been great meeting you, but you know what? We're out of here in 6 months, so I'm not actually going to call you or catch up because I've got my friends already that I'm going to hang out with and enjoy my time with.
But you know what? That's nothing to do with you, and it's everything to do with how many times they have felt that loss.
Yeah.
And I've been through phases like that for sure. It's hard. I don't think I've never ever, I've never ever pushed a friendship aside because I thought they weren't going to be around for longer. I have noticed something recently though. I've met some new people, school gates, because I am now a mother, okay? And I am meeting other parents and they're going, hey, so how long have you been here? I've been here 13 years. Oh, wow. So this is home. I'm sorry. Is this not your home? So that to me says so much about their mentality, right? To me, that says, okay, we're just stopping here for a bit because there happens to be a job and then see you later. Now, look, if we're turning to the question of advice for trailing spouses, my first bit of advice is this is home. Put your pictures on the wall and behave like you are going to live here for an infinite amount of time, because you see things in such a different way rather than the countdown clock. I just think that's not living. that is just like Sonic the Hedgehog tapping your toe. Wait, that's a 90s reference for you. But
I love it. I pictured it immediately.
It's just not living. How are you possibly going to embrace things? Like, does that mean you're not going to sign your kid up for something fun to do because, oh, we might have left by then, or, you know? So that's always the first thing that I say to people is get your pictures up. You live here and make the best of it, because I do not regret the things I have done, but those that I did not do. I think I wrote that in my high school yearbook, but I stand by it.
I'm pretty sure someone famous said that.
I don't know who said it. It definitely wasn't me. But it's kind of been a little mantra that's followed me around. And yeah, I would be, I could be sitting in the office in Sutton in Southeast London going, hey, I didn't do that. I didn't do that move. So I don't have any regrets. It's life, which means it's not perfect, but I don't have any regrets about being here and having my life here.
Gosh, Victoria, I feel like that is actually like a perfect note to end on. I actually haven't had anyone actually articulate that so explicitly, of the putting roots down thing. I feel like that's really, really good advice, because it can be like, I don't know, I'm finding that we're finding it even a challenging time at the moment, because, we're coming towards the end of like initial contracts and things with my husband's job that brought us here. And again, I don't want to go. I'm not ready to go. And I think that I obviously, without having hearing it explicitly from someone like you to like put your roots down, I go away and we go on holidays, or we go back to Australia, and I get off the plane in Singapore and I'm like, oh, I'm home. Like I do genuinely feel like that. And I think that's not for everyone. Like, whatever, that isn't for everyone. But I think that's probably allowed me to really like lean into my experience here as well. So I think like I can be a living sort of proof that advice is probably really good advice as well for a lot of people.
Good. Yeah, it is funny, that thing of go away to come back again, so that you're coming back to home, quote unquote. And look, I'm not going to lie. It really, really helps if you have family members 7,000 miles away who support you, and they don't give you grief about it, and they don't make you feel guilty. That's been absolutely huge for us. I still kept the card that my mom and dad wrote to me before we left. And it was a very out of character card. It was very sort of cheesy, if you like, because on the front it said "Follow your destiny," and it was a poem, like quite a kind of woo-woo sort of poem. Very not the style of my parents. But I took it to heart, and I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure they've given me this card because it's articulating everything that they don't know how to say to me in person. But they're saying, just go for this and grab it and see where it takes you. Don't hold back, and we are not going to hold you back. So amazing. And I know that not everybody has that. I know I've met people over the years who have had a hard time with family members just really begging them to come home. So there's a lot to this. So I'm not naive either. So I'm grateful.
So nice. Well, thank you so much for your time. I very much appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe. It's been a blast. I'll catch you soon.
Thanks.
Bye.